down here with a new parking lot over here. We will have a new, they have a walking track there that the PTA paid for. We will have to dig a lot of that up and we'll put a new track in and a new backstop and so forth for the baseball field. And right in this area is going to be a very, very large water retention system and penetrating, getting us below that 12 feet. We're in here, and then our playground will be on top. So just some things, you know, like the interior, the new ceilings and LED lights, teachers really like. And you know, the additions for, you know, the new gyms, they're just outstanding. I really like the way they're turning out. This picture here is a little combination of back in 2015. So remember, we're approving the bond like in 16, and that summer, or in the 2015 summer, this electrical gear was put in because we'd added air conditioning to all of our elementary schools. But you can see the new electrical gear, it's also in addition to our technology, so all of our computer labs and so forth, and everything else. But these two look like servers, but they're not. Those are your new boilers to the building. So this looks pretty cool. You know, when you look at it, you're like, wow, we should have had it. John has pictures of the old ones of it.
These are high efficiency.
Yeah. So the middle school, let's jump to the middle school. So 7.8 for Mason. So we had new cement work all up in here. This was done and it's from the 2003 bond series. But we did new cement work in the parking lot, and the cement wraps all the way around, way in the back, all the way around the building. As you knew, that was from an ADA perspective, that was very difficult to traverse. But there's a new parking lot. Here's we had this was all in deterioration and so forth. This is a loading dock and so forth. And then I just put one picture from the interior of the media center upgrades. Pierce Middle School, this was our most expensive project. It was $11.3 million. We had a steam boiler system from what, the 50s? Yeah, so that all had to go. We had to go to hot water because that's what everybody, you know, that's what, it's harder and harder to find people that work on steam systems. In fact, John sometimes has to go to people that work on ships to repair
Some of
them.
the older fellows.
Yeah.
But the boys really couldn't be recertified again. The state of Michigan came in to look at them, kind of let us go one more year with them, and then we were definitely gonna have to do some major improvements.
Yeah,
Keep
definitely.
the place heated.
Yeah. So you can see part of the new parking lot in circle drop-off, student drop-off circle. A few things in here. This was all done in a previous 2003, but the cement, there was cement panels up here. They were all failing, and those are all metal panels, and they've been replaced as part of the project. If you guys remember the covered walkway that was just deteriorated, rusted, falling apart, everything, all gone, new bus loop. And this is the boiler. So you can imagine like a kind of like a submarine. You have two of them, and they stick out way beyond these cement pads. So they'd be sticking out like this, and there's two of them in there. And now that those are all gone, three of these boilers right here is all it takes to heat the building. And then again, like I was talking about, this is what the classrooms have with the LED lighting and so forth. Kettering High School, $7.4 million. As you can see, we've got a roof project. If you go in the very back of Kettering, in the main parking lot, you'll see all of the foam panels and so forth from the roofers have stored there. They will be starting on that soon. We resanded the floors. This is the first time in 15 years. Yep, 15 years. Very long. So we had the floors resanded in the new, what we refer to as the new gyms, even though they're 15 years old, and everything repainted and so forth. They look really nice because the floors are starting to turn yellow with the deep coats and everything over the years. So now you've gotten the wood is brought back up to what it's supposed to look like for a gym floor. We did the boiler system at Kettering. This is the old one, and there's your cabinet. So, we did the baseball field. This is the baseball field. This is the softball field. We did this this loop back here, all redone. If you can imagine, if you're looking at this, the PAC is like right here in the back. So you have your baseball fields here, and then an athletic storage facility. That's all new. The locker rooms, the weight room. So Mott High School, $7.1 million. Again, hardwood floors refinished. Now this is, I like to park it here just for a second because we can really go through quite a bit of 15 years worth of projects from the 2003, or even a little bit slightly before that, 2003 bond and the current bond. So what have we done? In both high schools, we've doubled the square footage. So if we can imagine from the 2003 series bonds, you're looking at new tennis courts back here, the football or the athletic complex here, the PAC, Pool and Fitness Center, the gym. On the south end, there is a cognitively impaired program for, that's all new classrooms back there. And then really at the transition between the 2016 bond and really what was left of the 2003 bond, in this complex right here, all new, the new science rooms renovations there. Then the 2016 bonds we rolled in there, then you see the athletic storage facility, the fields, extension of the parking lot. The STEM lab is behind the PAC. And I'm probably missing a few things, but you kind of get the gist of everything that's been done. Both high schools had this much work in the last 15 years. And then we did some cafeteria work at Mott. And then the locker rooms. Transportation, we got a little present from the state telling us that they didn't want to insure or support, or they wanted our old tanks dug up. So we had to we decided to put everything above ground with new tanks and so forth, and we put a whole new parking lot into the whole facility there. And then we did renovate, we raised one building, or dismantled one of the buildings, and then we added some improvements to where the drivers and the staff and the central transportation staff are at. This is quite an improvement. When we pulled up the new tanks, they were still in great condition, but when it comes to EPA rules and DEQ rules, we just do what we have to. So this is just the parking lot here. This bus actually, even though we did buy some new buses, that's actually one of the lease buses you approved. Now there's a lot of other projects that we did, and I don't want to get into like all the photos and so forth, but the Covert Center, there's some roofing in there where the main fiber optic lines come in and so forth, we did there. Durant, when you look out back, we have a new parking lot back there. It's for staff, students, and then it's also for light tracks. We made the bus loop come around, light tracks can come in, it's easier for them to, from the bus drop off the system and so forth. And then we have the bus loop for the Durant kids, the light tracks bus over there. The Durant loop comes in through the west side of the building over here. Kingsley Montgomery, we did some, in our original design, there was rocks that were part of the heated drainage system because of the students' needs. We don't want any of those areas to be slippery in the wintertime. So it's a heated walkway into there where the buses pull in, but there was a rock system, and those rocks had to go because they can be used as projectiles and so forth. So
they were used as
yeah, they did, yes. So we did some improvements on and things like that. Knutson, we had a chiller system. Knutson's our only central AC building. Everything else has to be done with these univent type situations. So the chiller had to be fixed at Knutson. So here, this is all committed between the roof and the front steps. You guys all know how bad the front steps are. So we need to get that fixed. We'll be doing that probably in, I think, April, May time frame. Lutz, there's a few drainage issues at Lutz that we needed to fix. When we moved some students, we expanded the Stepanski East program at the senior center building, or at the old Leggett building. We needed to make some modifications with doors and security and so forth for those students, so it's 27. And then Stepanski, we've had some small projects there. The warehouse needed a new roof. Waterford Village, $27,000. I want to point out that in there we had Michigan Works in there, and Michigan Works is their fee to stay there, or use it. They didn't like to call it a rental fee. It was a type of just a fee to reimburse us for the square footage, so that covered that. However, some of these items, the labor of course wouldn't be able to be recovered, but some of the equipment and so forth, a lot of that was for the IT equipment that was on site that has cooling systems. That can be recovered, and it has been recovered. We put fiber network throughout the entire district, $2 million. And then we did some miscellaneous things. I mean, there's quite a bit. I've got a couple pictures of, and there's non-capitalized items. So there are things that we buy that don't hit the $10,000 threshold to be capitalized, but there's They're still a capital item, they just don't go on the list to track for depreciation purposes. So here's our fiber optic head-in room. This would be like one of those other type of things. The new, it's not new, but the reconditioned pedestrian bridge across between Mason and Grayson. So those are the type of things that would be in that $3 million line item. So you take everything that's in those, well, first I'll just talk about the revenue. You know, we sold 100 million, so that's all done. We've gained, by the time we get done with all the projects and so forth, we will have over $1 million in interest income and bond premium, so we really will have $101 million to spend on projects. We have spent and committed to 97 million, and that's what all those numbers added up will total up to. We have uncommitted at 3.8. I hesitate to say that it's uncommitted because there's still things that, as we move through and make sure, because we're getting really tight towards the end of this project, is that if we run into something at, when we get down to the 12-foot range at Schoolcraft or something like that, we want to make sure that we have money backed up. We don't want to commit it until we move through the projects that we have that's going to be presented to the board in a short period of time. So with that, some of the things that if we have money, we will loop back and pick up some things that that we may have chosen not to do at some of the buildings until we knew that we had the money to do it. But before we get to that, we still need to do some Stepanski. We want to do, in fact, in the construction meeting today, we talked about Kettering cement in the very front entryway is really in bad shape. It's almost a trip hazard. So we want to get that rolling and so forth, but we want to make sure that we still have, that we're comfortable with our, where we're at, in construction, that you never know until you get, the shovel in the ground. Once the cement is poured for the foundation and goes up, your costs are pretty much predictable, but until you actually get to that point, it's very difficult, and so you want to leave yourself a little bit of room before, so by 2021, that will definitely become committed. So let's talk about numbers and what our bonding capacity is, because now we have the $100 million behind us. Let's talk about what a see right now, and if you noticed, we were at 7 mils when we did this bond. However, our property values are improving so fast and our debt principal payments are coming down so fast that we moved our millage rate from 7 to 6.75, and that's what the board approved back in June. But this is what 6.75 mils will produce. We can have, when you structure your bonds, you cannot have too much money over here or you're technically over levying. So you can have enough for tax tribunals and so forth to get you through the next year. And so you can see that we ended this year, so at June 30th, we ended with a $1.7 million fund balance. We will end this year at $975,000. That's what 6.75 millage rate was. But if you maintain, you don't go down in this, you can see the purchasing capacity on debt. So right out the bat in 2021, you got $2 million in surplus funds that you can use to pay principal and interest payments on new bonds. 3 million, 7 million, 15, 23, you see how it just ramps up because things are going well. Now, this is, I want to say these first 5 years are based on the 3.4%. That is what our historic 5 years has been. Everything else is based on the 1.39. So what does all of that mean? What can you afford with a bond? You can afford in 2021 to issue 35 million, in 2023 70 million, 2026 45 million, total of $150 million over this period of time, keeping the millage rate at 6.75, no millage increase. Keep in mind though, that's based on how we're moving through with property values, if they stay steady the way they're at, and that interest rates don't rise. So these numbers could be tweaked a little bit if any of those factors change. What would you do in a 2020 bond issue? Well, we want to do building-wide classroom furniture. So throughout the district, we want new furniture for every room, which is really not just furniture, but it's changing the learning, the active learning environment. So it's not just, hey, we're going to put a whole bunch of new desks. We're going to put in a learning environment based on what the teachers in the instructional group would say is, hey, this is what we would really like for our classroom in a collaborative effort. The media centers, they're reaching, probably by the time we get here, what, 26, 27?
96.
96, okay. So 23, right? Yeah. 23 years old, so they're outdated. And so we'd like to turn them into some sort of flexible learning space. Obviously we have technology. I want to continue the site work with the fencing and the play structures, really bringing those up. When you do the site work, it just from a visual standpoint from the public, and you see the new fencing, you see the new backstop, so that they're not shifted or anything from the ice or from the frost lines pushing them up and so forth. It just looks so much nicer. It just makes a nice presence to everything. And then the play structures, we want to do PA system upgraded, fire alarm. We've done fire alarms in some of the buildings, so don't get me wrong, not every building would get something like this because we have upgraded in many areas. But of course, the roofing projects never stop. In fact, the roofs that we did 20 years ago are now needing to be replaced. HVAC with just a few points on the, when I say that we have a 23-year-old or media center, those HVAC units are starting to need to be replaced. So we're going to have to start thinking about doing that type of thing. And then we have constant requests for additional security cameras and expanding our security. Middle schools, again, the active learning environment with the classroom furniture. You'll see kind of a common theme here, the same things over and over again. The difference is really, the ad would be a kitchen upgrade with serving lines to redesign and make it more efficient. We started doing this with some of the equipment, but the actual line itself needs to be reconfigured. Pierce Middle School, athletic field renovation and new track. Let's talk about Pierce just for a second, because Pierce has the stadium, it has the field, track, and everything else. The way Pierce was designed was, and upgraded a long time ago, was the fact that when we closed Township High School, and the fact that this Pierce Middle School is attached to really the community center with the township offices and everything else, it had more, when it comes to track, the athletic field, and so forth, that complex. We need to bring it back up, and we know that we need a new track, tennis courts, and basketball court at Mesa. And this is, for example, this may be one of those things that we circle back around when we feel secure that we have the committed cost. So some of these things would come off the table because we can finish them up with the 2016 bond. High schools, again, it's a lot of the same thing. Now, in the high schools, though, this becomes a real important component. The PAC lighting renovation, believe it or not, we're getting at the end of the life of our lighting, and you can see that in some of the performances, some of the flickering lights and so forth. We're definitely at the end of of that system. It's a system. It's not just light bulbs and so forth. It's an actual computer system with old lighting technology. We need to upgrade it to LED. We need a new computer system. And then one of the things that's been very difficult with the PACs is the fact that they have had to build their scenes. Everything that they do carpentry-wise is on the stage. So all that dust is carrying everywhere, and it's constant cleanup, where we really need a scene shop, a separate, maybe 2,000 or 2,500 square foot building, separate from the PAC, where they can actually build their scenes and so forth, and then bring them in for onto the stage, and keep those two separate. Of course, we still have more roofing projects. There's been a request as far as the pool entry and exit, the redesign of keeping the two areas separate from. It's been a little bit complicated the way we designed it originally. When you get into, you think about that far many years ago, and nowadays with the security that we want, we need to tighten this up. Let's see here. There's definitely kitchen upgrades again. Kettering needs building-wide air conditioning. They do have some spots, or many spots, I shouldn't say some, but many spots where they do have air conditioning. So when we added the new science rooms, they have units on the roof. Those are all new. That all has air conditioning in it as well. Different spaces like that. The PACs, World Fitness Centers, all those guys, they have different spots in there. They have the air conditioning, but direct classroom, like in the very front of the building, kind of your older parts of the building, they need air conditioning. We need to replace the parking lot, and what I was talking about, the entry and the cement. We want to do some of this work now with what we have, so we're watching some of the numbers tightly so we can try to at least do part of this project with the current dollars. We need to do office renovations. Mott High School has a lot of HVAC already done, but the old gym, the cafeteria, and a few remaining rooms. There's only 1 or 2 rooms that really need air conditioning now for that, and then the classroom renovations. So here, the back lot is starting to fail and deteriorate pretty quick. We still have roofing, and it's dark out now, but if you look out back, the windows are delaminating as the building is aging. We still need to, by this time, as we get further into it, we'll need another round of new buses. We want to make sure that we get all of our music equipment and athletic equipment upgraded. So, but the major component of this project will be an early childhood center, a brand new building. We will build it on the north end of the site. In fact, this next slide has the picture of it. When I switch to it, I'll show you exactly where it's going to go. But the current site is 44,000 square feet. We want to increase it to 65,000. If we increase it to 65,000 square feet, we can take the students that are at Leggett now, the Spansky East, if you will, and move them back to under the same roof as this new. And so then, again, you would have all new classroom, new parking lot, and then we would, once that's all complete, we would dismantle the current Spansky building. So here's the site. And you can see the intersection here. What we would do, the first thing we would do is we would take all the playground equipment and we get new equipment and we would build it over here. That would be the first step that we do. And then we would take over this part and we would build the building pretty close to the old building and start moving north depending on the square footage and the design. And then we would dismantle this building and we would have one big parking lot here. So you'd have the building, back of the building, the playground, and all the parking here. Any questions on that? So, we have to make a couple choices now with, if we go out for a bond proposition, this is the legal terms of it. So there's this style, or I think that, a lot of people like this style where you take this portion of the paragraph where it's got the colon and you take this and you pull it and point it all the way through. It's a little bit more understandable for the people reading it and saying, okay, what do we want to do? Boom, 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 boom. Now this is an example of what we could do. We would probably, since the early childhood center is a major component and it depends on the cost, in this case it would fit here. Probably first bullet point would be a new early childhood center. All this is just legal terms. We can come back to this when we're done with the presentation here. So what does that entail? So we've got the information meeting tonight, what we're talking about. We would like to send the proposal, we'd have to send it to Dickinson Wright, and then they would send it on to Michigan Department of Treasury. On the 10th, we have scheduled already a pre-qualification meeting with Treasury. They will review our plans, they will review our ballot language and make a determination. They'll make their own suggestions and adjustments, bring it back to us, and then on the 19th, we would ask for the board vote to take action on Dickinson Wright to be the attorneys for this, and then vote to go with the preliminary qualification of bonds, which then makes it truly official with Treasury, and then Treasury they get 30 days to give us the official nod to say, yes, go ahead. By February 6th, the board would take action to call for an election. We only have till February 11th to get it to Oakland County for to get it on the ballot. And then May 5th, we would have the actual election. What we would need to do internally, so tonight we need an unofficial Board of Education approval to move forward, kind of the nod to say, is this something that you want us to continue to work on and pursue? Then we would, if that's the case, then we would work through the legal process and timelines. While we're doing the legal side, we also need to do the public side. So on the public side, we need to seek stakeholder input. We have the planned projects, we have a lot of things on the table, but we need to get the details worked out with the public and the stakeholders. And then establish that within, and it's already established basically in the bond language. There's a lot of flexibility. So once we hear from the public what they want, it's still in the bond language to be flexible to accommodate that, unless it's just something that would be like, hey, we want you to build an ice rink, like, well, that's not in the bond language, but you know what I mean? So, and then we would obviously communicate the plan to the community via staff meetings, PTAs, everything we did before. And you see all the different areas that we would go and then start an informational communication plan. So if we were talking about, okay, who's going, so there's two opportunities. You can go in March or you can go in May. Or you can go further down. You know what I mean? You can go in August, you can go in November during the general election. As you well know, as what I've explained, you know, the millage rate will change, but as I've explained, we've got projects scheduled all through 2021 with Fairfax. However, this looks like a very good plan. We have 11 districts that are going in March. There's a debate if you should go in March or not. You could get drowned out by the presidential campaign and so forth, and where people aren't hearing your message or what it is. But there's 11 school districts going in March. However, there's 39. There's going to be over 40 by the time. There's only a few open slots left at Treasury that are going in May.
And Bill, we have the slot for May. We're not able to go March because we couldn't get in there because they were booked for March. So that's not the option. So of course, what we have to consider is there will be a cost for the election in May. That can be taken out of the bond once that's approved. But we missed that window.
And yeah, that was my question. So the last time we did it in March, and we just piggybacked on the presidential primary of 2016. So in this instance, if we go in May, we are essentially paying for our own election because there's no other issues, ballot, anything that we can piggyback on in Waterford.
Not as of right now, right, Bill?
Right.
Yeah, not as of right now.
And what's the cost?
It's probably around 40,000, between 40 and 50. It's all chargeable to the bond if it does pass.
So we checked to see if March would be an option. We really pushed, right? Bill really pushed to see if we could get in there, but we're about 5 or 6 days short. Because of the economy, because of where we're at, you can see a lot of districts are getting in with the Department of Treasury to schedule these.
So,
Bill,
It's okay, no, you can, I wait till the end, I thought it was
Sorry.
done. Nope, you're fine, I just.
nope, it's questions are next. I was gonna go back to the, belief, the plan language, I think, but
Okay.
go ahead.
Trustee Sutter.
I just had one quick question relative to Stefanski. I think when you said recovered, that means the cost of some of the capital equipment in there.
Oh,
we
you
were
mean
able-
village?
I'm sorry, Waterford Village, yes.
Yeah,
We were able to pull that out and use elsewhere?
Yeah, yeah. Now, there's equipment there, so, for example, Moving Michigan Works there, they paid in their fees, you know, it's a federal grant, you know, and so they paid within their rental agreement, if you will, a lot more than just that, but some of this wasn't part of this bond. So there are units on the roof of where the old gym is, but it's newer than what the building is. Those can be lifted off and actually reused, and they're substantial dollars. Yeah, so we are not going to just leave everything and say, well, you know, it's done. We're picking off everything that's still good in the building.
Wonderful, thank you. My other comment is, first of all.
We haven't done that yet, though. I mean,
No, I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I know, I just wanted, you had said recovered, and I thought that's what it meant,
Yeah.
that we can reuse and
Yep.
repurpose for our own needs. Mr. Kekovich, I haven't seen you at a board meeting in quite some time, so I want to take this opportunity to extend to you my sincere and heartfelt gratitude for the extraordinary work that you have done, as well as Mr. Holbrook, as well as the staff, in these just phenomenal projects. That this represents a significant improvement to our school district and to our community, and an enormous amount of work. And so I wanted to take the chance. I'm so glad to have you here today.
And I appreciate it, it's great to have positive feedback. It takes us all to do this, so it takes you guys to do it as well as us, and we'll certainly pass that along to everybody else that's involved as well.
I'd appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those comments, because when I moved back to this slide, because John's been, I mean, when you talk about the STEM lab in the back, which you can't see back here, it was the auto shop that was converted.
Right, I
Okay,
know.
and it's a great facility. However, John was part of the team that actually built the auto shop. So it's, you know what I mean? So it
I know he's our
goes way back.
historian, he knows the pipes are buried, and
Yeah,
pipes,
yeah,
and
it's fun.
yeah,
John's
bodies.
responsible for all of these improvements and everything. It's an amazing amount of work. So, much appreciated.
My last comment is also how very fortunate we are as a school community that our Waterford citizens value our schools, they value our children, and they step up to the plate, and they have made this all possible. So I never, ever want to take that for granted. We are a grateful school community because of our very generous Waterford citizens. So just wanted to make that comment as well.
Wanted to comment also, on the projects, fantastic job. I've, seen them in action. The parking lots are fantastic. The traffic flow is flawless. I had a lot of experience at Cooley, went and checked out Mason. The buildings are beautiful. The boiler systems, yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing that, how we can fit them into these cabinet-looking things, It's pretty fantastic. So, and the idea with the bond and, creating, putting money into furniture and, the idea of possibly moving that towards like learning communities and things like that, is something that I think would be really a great opportunity for our kids. I've seen them in action in Bloomfield Hills. They've really rebuilt that whole school around learning communities. And I've seen the furniture in the way that it can support actual learning and education for the kids, especially the little ones that move around a lot. So I think that's a fantastic thing. My one issue though is with the bond. I'm a little concerned about paying for a special election, $42,000. When we could piggyback on the presidential election. We've done that in the past, it's worked out great for us. People in this community seem to really support the work that we're doing, I think because they're seeing the end product firsthand. I know we're short on the deadline. Is there anything that we can do, because you had mentioned we're a few days off with Treasury, right? That we could maybe try to make that effort so that we can save ourselves. Because I think we'll be just as successful in that presidential election.
In March or November?
The March election, so.
Yeah, we did, and Bill, you can give a little history, we called,
Yeah,
some folks
they
and.
tried multiple times, and they said, no, it's booked. And, as you can see, everybody's making a rush to get in and get into the May. March was already booked. It does seem a little frustrating that in March, let's go back to here, that they've only have slots for 11, but yet here we are almost 40 for, that there's only that many slots for March, but yet here you have almost 40. I mean, so, it's, I don't know why I can't answer that. So
Is
August is an opportunity as well.
Do we get into trouble where we'd have to drop our mills and then it would be a raise in taxes?
Yeah, we'd have to drop mills, raising taxes. The other concern about August is that a lot of times people are not engaged in school.
It's better to do it while school is in, so it's.
Yeah, regarding August, I would just say that I did experience that in our previous district, and August was I wouldn't recommend August was not the time to go, and we were not successful in August for that reason.
Are you talking about rebuilding Stokansky?
No, it's a brand new building.
That's what I mean,
Oh.
rebuilding, isn't it a
No.
brand new building? You're building it where the playground is, instead of, because we've added on to it numerous times. I was actually there back in, I think 69 or 70, when they put the addition on the main part of the building.
Gotcha, yeah.
And again, you talk about parking lots, I'm thinking our parking lots don't seem to hold up, because I've seen them rebuilt, I've seen them fail. But after 22 years, I guess things do that.
Yeah. I'll say this,
So it'll be knocking down that building and moving it over to,
one of the things that we're doing right now is we are coring all of our parking lots.
okay,
So when they're done, we're drilling a core out of it and saying, did you put what you were supposed to as far as the thickness of the asphalt in there?
okay.
Not to say that didn't happen here, because this is a very old parking lot, but it is deteriorating.
So the idea is to keep the school open, build behind it,
Yeah,
and then during the summer, remove the old building and have the new build and put that as a parking lot.
And Bill, with Stepanski, so you're saying that the Leggett kids too as well would all be at
They'd be
Stepanski?
able to go under the same roof.
So it would all be under one
campus.
one
yeah.
campus?
With some additional room to add on some
Yes,
further
yeah,
opportunities.
we want to push to see, if you got a brand new building, there's very big opportunities for tuition base to expand and possibly maybe down the road GSRP. It depends on the state if they'll grant us more slots or not. We did talk to Head Start and they won't. They're, unless somebody else goes out of business, if you will, but, you know, the likelihood of that is not going to happen, so, we've already, the OLSA is the people that pass the Head Start money through. And they said, no, we're gonna keep our slots that we have, but GSRP has an opportunity. Our early childhood is funded by 3 ways. One is through GSRP, Great Start Readiness Program, Head Start through the feds, so state, fed, and then tuition, which is just, you know, parents.
Thank you, Jim.
One other thing that maybe wasn't mentioned here, but Stepanski is a 2-story building.
Yes.
And for preschoolers and early education, that makes no sense whatsoever. So this is another nice, in fact, I think in some cases, you know, it can be concerning. So
Sure.
it's really a nice step in the right
Yes.
direction. And largely because when we bring our youngest learners in, many times we can then retain those families. It starts them off on a really good foot. It's helpful from an educational standpoint, but also from a
Absolutely.
retention standpoint, which is a great thing. So.
Absolutely.
There's also a lot of deferred maintenance on the existing building.
Yeah.
Sure.
So if
Yep.
you're looking at a big bill, it actually gets reduced from the new build.
So we do have to put in a new parking lot, as Rob was mentioning. The roof on the old part has failed, so that needs to be replaced. And then just pause on
It's
it,
such
we
an
need
old
to
building.
start thinking about new playground equipment, and so it just makes sense to build. And what's nice about the space is that, you know, we're almost sad to see the building go, but look at the space that we have to actually develop a brand new building.
The main building is only 75 years old.
I would say one other thing is it's really nice for the community. This last bond issue, while completely necessary, so grateful for all of it. But this is something we can really point to, educationally speaking, and brick and mortar that it's a really point of pride for Waterford, which is a great thing to have in a bond, you know, and a great thing for us to have for our students, so.
As you and Scott had mentioned, that for our students, if we can expand and have lots of room for more opportunities for preschoolers to come in early and get that educational jump, this is the way to do it.
Yeah, our team, as we've discussed, Joan, this is the crown jewel of this bond program, and this is so important to the community. If you think about other surrounding communities, they are building on to early childhood, or they're building brand new building. So this is very timely, and as you mentioned, academically, and this is key for this community to continue to grow those opportunities.
Why 100 million, or the 150 instead of the 100 we've been getting? Because we can, and things are costing more.
We can, and now having to raise the millage rate, which is nice for the community, and we've identified that new
You can
projects.
spend it.
We can spend it, yeah.
What are we looking at for rebuilding?
So like a new building like this with the new parking lot and everything, right around, well, our numbers show 26, I would say 30 million, just to be safe.
And what's interesting is we had a pretty reasonable number that we had to go in for repairs. Is that 6 or 7 million?
Yeah, that's a great point. We're gonna have, as John said, that this roof is not just a normal tear off and put a membrane on top. This actually, go ahead, John.
Yeah, it actually has to, it's like 3 layers of 1/2-inch gypsum board, which they won't allow us to re-roof over, so that's gonna have to be pulled off completely, open to the sky, and then redecked and re-roofed. So big numbers on that.
Twice as much as putting on just a new roof, or 3,
at least,
because
yeah.
it's so much more to take off the roof.
Yeah,
It's
you're gonna have,
cheaper to build than rebuild.
yeah, and then you got your old boiler steam plant down there that serves half that building too, which is not the best shape at all either.
But it's
So,
cool down there.
yeah, it's cool down there.
That's my old elementary.
Scary for preschoolers, I'll tell you that.
Scary
Wasn't it
for
this year
sixth
that had were you in the class where the snake got out?
Yeah. It was our snake, we, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
back in 73.
We found it in 2004, I think. In one of the ear ducts.
What was it, the heat register?
I would just like to say, you know, I told you a couple months ago, you weren't at the meeting, that I did the walkthrough in Mott, and I actually graduated from Mott some 30-some years ago. And the difference between then and now is amazing. With the money that you had, it's phenomenal, the difference. I mean, I shared some of the pictures on social media to people that couldn't come to our reunion, and they were like, that's our school, that's our school. And I'm like, yeah, it looks awesome. And Stepanski, my kids went to Stepanski for preschool and kindergarten, and hands down, that was the best school that I mean, and I love Mott, everybody knows I love Mott, and Pierce. Della Lutz isn't there anymore, but Stepanski, hands down, I mean, with what they do with the building the way it is, I can only imagine what will go on in that school, in a brand new school. I can only imagine, and it's exciting, because we need that, and pull the Leggett kids back over there, and I took Safety Town right there in that parking lot in the 70-some. So I'm excited, I think it's a great idea.
And Bill, so you said it's Great Start Readiness, Head Start,
Yep.
and then it would be
Tuition.
based childcare.
And the WIPC program is there.
What's that?
too.
Oh, the WIPC, yes, the special ed program.
Special ed preschool.
So, with all of this said and everything else, do we get an unofficial nod to move forward?
I have one contingency, and you know, it's about the date of the
Sure.
election. I really do, I think this bond is, you know, I think we're headed in the right direction on this. But I would like, if there's some way we could, have we reached out at all to our legislators at all? I mean, is there anything that they could do to help us, assist us?
I don't think so. I think it is what it is, and
So the folks we did talk to, maybe talk a little bit about that, because we called them after. they were denied.
Paul Corneliuson, our architect from French Associates, he's got good relation with these, so does Dickinson, right, Laura Bassett and so forth. So they reached out to all their contacts, and it was a no.
We pushed hard.
Yeah. And they've dealt with these people for a long time. They know they've got the contacts, a great relationship. In fact, it's a really good relationship because normally people don't get this kind of information. They got it for us.
I was looking for our timeline, I think it was in the timeline, but if we're successful in this bond issue, we do have some flexibility, and obviously we will be going out to our community and to stakeholders
Yes.
to further assess for some of these. And we also want to be strategic about, you know, where we spend it, and have some of this money as we're going through a strategic plan for our district to make sure that we're aligned, and that, you know, we're not spending money on something that, you know, that doesn't fit into our strategic vision for our district, so, okay.
The classroom environment, when we talk about this, I think would be, this is the wrap up the building, because the building renovations, John's work and his team and so forth, are coming in really nice. However, this right here will finish the job. It'll make it look super, super nice. And so what's important about that is exactly what you said, is getting it right. And making sure that the teachers are getting what they want. 'Cause
Exactly.
I've seen in other districts where the teachers are like, well, that's not really what I wanted.
It's a tell
It's
instead
like,
of a
okay, so you just
ask.
spent,
Yeah.
$5 million in furniture and you didn't even get what was adequate for the classroom.
Right, it's a big deal,
And
it's a
it's
big
different for
investment,
every
and it's gonna
room. I
be there a
mean,
long time, so.
What might work well in fifth grade is not gonna work well in the kindergarten
Right.
class.
Well, and I think there's a lot of research out there that can be looked at, and there are a number of school districts that have recently engaged in this type of renovation that we could go and see and talk to and learn
Good.
from
Yeah.
and work with. And we would want principals, teachers, students even involved in
Absolutely.
the conversation.
Sit in the chairs, see what it looks
Yes.
like in action, all of those things. A
Yeah,
lot of due diligence with that.
right, and what we could do in this is pilot some classrooms.
Sure.
So they're really trying this furniture out. I'll give you an example. When I was at Mott High School either this week or last week. We were in a classroom and you could just see the furniture was not conducive to an active learning environment where people are turning and they couldn't move furniture, it's crammed in there. So when you have all these different options, it really helps the learning environment. The other thing is we have some of this active learning environment furniture in our elementaries. If you go through there, there's the Waterford Foundation has helped out with quite a bit. So teachers have already begun to move in that direction. And if you go in and you can see the student, they'll choose certain chairs that work best for them, for the learning environment. Some of them are just with these, some of them want chairs that will have some movement, and the research and the science behind that is really incredible. So this is really about getting into the classrooms and really the impact in the teaching and learning. That's exciting. And again, our districts around us are doing this.
I can say that the kindergarten teachers, from what I hear, actually really like the smart boards. Just, and actually seeing my daughter use it, it's actually pretty, helpful in learning, very helpful in the learning process. And when I actually talked to her teacher, she indicated that those kindergarten teachers, some teachers don't like them, but those kindergarten teachers really do enjoy them. So I think that idea of, working with and finding out from the teachers, the students, what it is that they want and what will help them.
To that point, when we talk about technology, it's kind of a placeholder. We need to develop with Darren and with the instructional team what that instruction or what that technology vision is going to be. I stopped in and saw a new principal today. She's got some ideas, but we need to take a look at that and what's going on around us. I think Waterford has done a fantastic job with the technology that's in there, but we need to look to the future, what's going to work 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now. So that will be a part of further work.
Good news is, whatever that technology is, we have a great infrastructure up inside those ceilings and stuff to get us there, and the electrical panels and so forth to power up, support it. So I'm not hearing any opposition to us moving forward, so, okay.
Nice job.
Good.
Yeah.
Well done. When would you be looking at rebuilding these dormers?
I knew you were gonna say.
If this passes, I have ulterior motives and all the plans that are whirling through my head.
We would, in probably 2021, we would move the playground. And then we would, see.
Because it's needing a look, that's what I'm saying, it's
Yeah.
something that's going
There's
to
something,
be
there's something.
on the
that
forefront
we
because
yeah, we
it
need,
has to be done.
so, what we needed to determine is within these two windows here, what are we going to do with the 35
Right, it's not
million
enough, you don't wanna
Yes.
spend the entire first draw
on
yeah.
just that building,
Yeah.
so
But
it
you
might
don't want
be,
us
but we
spending
can,
$2 million putting a roof on a building we're gonna tear down.
Right,
right, so
6 million.
How much did you say the project would be for the?
close to 30 is what I would be safe to estimate. Right now, we're at $26,760,000, but to be exact with it, you never know when you put like I said, put the shovel in the ground. However, there are things that, these are going on in statistics that are averages for years, so things can change. And as you can see, we really ramped up and was able to, because things are improving so dramatically in the community, in the district, that we were able to do a lot in a very short window. I mean, all these projects, these were all done in really 3 years. And if you think about the 4th year, we did all that work with the last $20 million in the 2003 because it took so long. So really in 4 years, you're seeing tremendous changes. And it's all about paying back debt, better interest rates on the old bonds with the refundings, and property values.
I want to make sure that it is something we're looking at because of Nancy Williams Lake being as old. I don't want to put $100,000
Yes.
into a building and tear it down.
Yeah, there will be some cost to keep it afloat. It'll be some patching and possibly a very cheap coat of resurfacing here just to keep people safe in the parking lot and so forth with the deterioration that's going on, maybe some patching and so forth here and here. But we want to act as fast as we can
That's what
on getting them, not just for the sake of, not putting money into this, but just how nice this is. This is gonna be, when you drive by, when you look at the facade now of our elementaries and our middle schools and our high schools, how nice they look. When you go by them, it's an improvement to the community, not just to the building. And not only is it improvement for like what our students go to, but our teachers as well. Pride in the community, our staff, they need to be in a really nice work environment. We owe that to them. And this will be the last component of everything that we have to get us going forward. And so the quicker we build it, the better. I just want to be cautious about how fast we can
And again, I'm not,
do that. Yep.
but it's gonna be it'll be our main focus.
Yes.
It'll be the heart and soul of basically this bond is you.
All right, good. All right.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, so we'll move on, it's a short item, but the paraprofessional, some of the wages adjustments we did, there were a couple of questions from a couple of board members, and so we wanted to follow up with you, let you know what's happened since then, and we actually have a next step plan for that as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Janet and Nadine, and we'll pick it up from there, okay?
Joan, I believe you had asked us at the board meeting couple
We talked about the
yes.
new salary structure.
Yes, right. And so you had asked, you had wanted to see the surrounding districts and what they were paying their classroom paras. So on the sheet that I handed out, one side has classroom and the other side has special ed. So classroom para, I included Walled Lake, West Bloomfield, Clarkston, and Huron Valley. So as you can see, the classroom represents about 40 paras right now. The special ed represents close to 160.
160, wow. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the paras that we do have are the lowest paid amongst our surrounding school districts still.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And
In both cases.
is there a recommendation coming forward to increase that, or is it not seen as something that we want to look at yet?
We've had some discussions. This has been something that we've, taken a good look at. We did institute a raise. We've been monitoring the vacancies. We still are at around 25 vacancies. That
For
was
special ed.
For special education, yes. For
Okay.
special education. And so, I'm clearly just speaking to special education at this point.
Yeah, so let me come back to your question, Joan. We certainly would like to pay all of our employees more money, no question about that. What we did initially, when we looked at the classroom paraprofessionals, we typically don't have a problem filling
Oh,
those
that's what I wanted to ask you,
positions.
so there's no vacancies in
I think
our
there's
paras?
one that we just
posted
posted.
one today from Riverside. There
Whereas-
was an additional one.
Right, whereas then where Nadine's going with the special ed, we have still at this point 25 openings. So what we want to always recommend to you is the best place to put our limited resources in terms of our dollars. Now, do we believe we need to move in an upward movement, perhaps next spring on that with this, continue to grow that? Yes, because we don't want to get into the same situation. To give you an idea, just for 40 people, if we would have run the same schedule for the special ed, we would have looked at another $86,000. And so we knew that at that time. So we kind of looked at where do we need to put the resources.
Understood, if there aren't vacancies and it doesn't appear to be an issue, I don't want to create a problem where there isn't one, but I am still concerned if, even with the pay raise, we still have 25 vacancies in special ed. That seems like a lot of vacancies, and that affects our classrooms, obviously, without consistency, especially for our most vulnerable learners, and not seeing the same face every day, and so I would be very concerned about those 25 vacancies, and I appreciate you keeping a close eye on it,
And I believe, didn't we previously attempt to approach Oakland schools about helping us with this, or taking that portion over so that we could?
Yes, with KMS.
Yeah. Yeah, with our Kingsley Montgomery Center, we did. So we've had those discussions.
And they were a no-go on that.
They are not looking in any capacity to get into filling any kind of positions or taking on any kind of HR functions for local districts that run center-based operations. And that was over multiple meetings. I am currently in a center task force meeting. I'll be going back, a number of Oakland County superintendents, chief business officials, and my counterparts. But that one thing that is off the table is that Oakland schools will not be involved with taking any kind of human resource functions or center-based operations.
I will say that I met with one of the assistant superintendents from Oakland schools today, and we know that we have an issue, and they know that we need their help. But because we run the county program, this is not just affecting Waterford and our students, it's affecting everyone. So that's why this task force has been put together to take a look at options to see what we can do. Some of that could change in the future in terms of how they may help us. We do have some ideas that I've talked with the teachers union president, Mary Crate. We'll see where that goes. There's some options with that regarding the teachers. Paraprofessionals, I don't think that's really been discussed. What we would like to do as a next step, though, is we would like to initiate a referral bonus. We would model it after what we did with transportation. But the difference with this one is, and we talked about this today, is that we would open this up to all employees to, market and talk about the opportunities. Because even though this is a lower wage for special education, it's really a marked improvement from where we were. And so we want to get the word out to see if that would work. Our next step beyond that is we may have to we will continue to monitor this, and we may need to come back in a couple of months and recommend some additional dollars to look at this, because we cannot continue to have these open positions.
Absolutely. And I would hope that Oakland schools would step it up relative to the center-based program. We've been talking about them for years now on that, and it feels to me like we're at a critical pitch here. And I don't know what it takes, but Nadine, I appreciate you serving on that task force, because you know it better than anybody, and I'm really grateful to you for that, so.
Thank you.
Bill, you might be able to help me with this. I remember Oakland Schools gave us a bunch of money to build King's Life. Was that partially like, hey, you're gonna run it, here's extra money, you take care of it when you spend it? I don't wanna say that, but I know that former people they were really good with magic tricks, oh, look at all this money, and,
the one component of that money coming in, and it was an 11.9, I think, or almost $12 million project, is renovating Kingsley. It ends up being a really nice building. They did a great job on the renovations on it, and again, John and his team and so forth did that. However, it came with a cost of having to keep it open for
25 years.
25 years. I remember there was a number, and it was
so
strings attached.
Yeah,
and some people are gonna be here for 25 years, so they take all the strings and run, and maybe hold it down.
Right.
We have a 25-year commitment to run that.
Okay.
We are now into our 10th year, so we have 15 years. In 15 years, we are no longer obligated to run the center programs. So, and it was specific to 3 center programs because of the needs of the northern part of the county.
Okay. But again, the numbers and timeline that I was vaguely remembering.
you're right.
I will say that, again, so Nadine is on the task force. I have talked with the Oakland County Superintendent, Wanda Cook Robinson. We've met on this, and we're working with Assistant Superintendent Mike Yogan. So we're continuing those conversations to see what we can do.
Just that I'm sorry, but I'm gonna punctuate it one more time. We've been in conversation with them for 5 years, and the situation has gotten precariously worse, and they owe us help. There's just no 2 ways about it, especially given the federal funding, that we're not seeing what we should be in special education. These dollars, the time and resources, now we have issues with just trying to find special education teachers and paras. We need help, and it's an Oakland County program, and we ought not to get stuck holding the bag on this one, so.
So I'll share one of the things which from the task force is that, which I think that's different this year, is the task force.
It is.
I know one of the superintendents talked about at our superintendent's meeting on Friday about looking at changing certification so we have some more flexibility, because this isn't just gonna be a Waterford issue or Oakland County issue, this is a statewide issue. So the pressures are really coming, and it's not gonna get any better if we don't find some type of a relief valve. that's gonna give us more options. So some of that's happening. But the task force is new for this year, so.
It is, there's scheduled for 2 meetings, we've had one, our second one will be on December the 2nd. And I'll certainly keep superintendent and cabinet members and you folks apprised, see where it goes.
We need a really pissed off board member on that.
And you said you would, Scott, that you're opening it district-wide, so I think the opportunity.
Yeah,
Right.
and that was really some good thinking today, and I wanna give credit to the team here, and, cause that's not what we did with the transportation piece, but we're at such a critical situation. We wanna start the buzz and some conversation, and so we're looking at that, and we're hoping to initiate that right after Thanksgiving break. The next piece is the bus drivers, and so we want to talk, we've been working on this probably for the last 6 or 7 weeks. We want to bring the information that we've looked at forward. We have challenges here, finding drivers, and we also have, which you may have heard, is we have some habitual late buses to schools. I know which school that is, I won't share that now, but we have got to fix this. So some of our routes they've done such a creative job in condensing the need for drivers. Some of our routes are so tight, and they're tight to the point where we start getting into the snow season, which we experienced already a week ago, and any other traffic delays, that puts kids late. And then, of course, teachers are saying, we're ready to start teaching and learning, and our kids in our buses are not here. So we want to share some of that information with you and talk about some possible resolution for that.
Okay, thanks. So I'm gonna go over quite a bit in transportation because I just want to bring you guys up to speed on really the specifics of what the transportation department goes through when we're, in the process of transporting kids, and what the constraints are when you don't have drivers and so forth. So I do have Terry here, and Mike is also here, so we can, whatever questions you have, and then us, obviously Jim right next to me, so I have the transportation team to field any of your questions. So we're gonna go over our geographic territory, our ridership, school start and end times. This is gonna be an important component, the special runs and then basically our staffing resources. So geographic territory, we span 4 townships, 1 city, 40 square miles, 1 preschool, 9 elementaries, 2 middle schools, 3 high schools, 1 special needs school, and then we send 2 out of district, we have 2 runs out of district schools. And that would be, how, just real quick on a side note, we talk about Kingsley, Montgomery, people are bringing their kids in for the specialized programs that we have. We have a few kids that go to specialized programs in another district, for like hearing impaired would be one of them. Right now we have 8161 district students, 5,096 are eligible to actually ride a bus. They're within, those are the people that are beyond our policies as far as like 1 mile walking distance and so forth, and then 272 qualify for special needs routes. So what you're going to see this is going to be real repetitive. You're going to see it this way. I have a different chart, and then I have it in a word form. So if you just follow along, 40 minutes is the time frame. So when we drop off at the high school, we only have 40 minutes to pick up the students, bring them back. And this is in the morning, back to the middle school, and then we have 50 minutes to get them to the elementary schools in the morning. So you can see a 40-minute, 50-minute window, 40 square miles, and with the constraints of staffing, how tight that can be. Gets tighter, obviously, in the afternoon. So we arrive at the high school at 2:28. We depart 2:35. So if you're a kid and you're getting 2:35, you're not getting on the bus. It's already leaving. So you got to be back to the middle school by 3:08 with a departure at 3:15. It only gives us 33 minutes to bring all of the high school students back home and back to the middle school to pick up. And then you have 42 minutes to get to the elementary schools. Same thing again, just a different visual. So I don't know if you guys get the handout so that you can follow through on this. Okay. So you can refer back to this, but you can see the same, just a different layout. But here's where it gets we break it down a little bit more, verbatim here. But if you look at the number of routes, in Kettering we have 11, in Mott we have 14 routes. This is the student count, average minutes. So really just you'll see in a minute a little disclaimer where these numbers are coming from. They're coming out of our polyplot system is what we call it. It's really a navigation type of system that plots out where all the kids live and the routes and so forth. And so we are 8 minutes on, basically over, we're short 8 minutes and 6 minutes in these two areas. So on average, we're 7 minutes to the middle schools. Same thing again, when you look at here, we're at Pierce 2 to the good, 4 to the bad. At Mason, that average is 1 minute, and that's because it looks like there's 2 here, but really you have 13 routes versus 14 here. If I'm going too fast, just tell me. We can stop right there and just have a discussion. So you can see we're 2 minutes short, 4 minutes to the good, so we're on average 1 minute. We have a 1 minute cushion. So this is how it breaks down in our elementaries. I know Scott didn't want to name the building, but you can see it in the chart where the problems are. So see where, Grayson's is the good, but then you start seeing in the southwest, or at least these 2 areas here, the south or the west side, you see just how short we are. And
Bill?
Yeah.
Are we required by law to have buses?
Only for special ed students, special education students that have it.
So if we didn't have busing, we could save a lot of money.
We probably lose a lot of students. So.
Okay, I just want to put another thing out there that,
Yeah, it's
because
not,
some people say, well, I demand or I want this.
It's not a right.
It's not,
It is, I mean, technically, it's not a right to have.
it's
general
common
ed
sense, but
transportation.
it's not something we must do.
Right,
It's something we provide our
correct.
We
students.
actually had it on the table to cut it
We-
when we
we
went
have.
through the economic downturn. It was one of the things we talked about.
One,
That's
It
how
was
I
so
know
bad, yep,
Amy,
exactly.
is that Royal Oak? Which district? They don't have transportation except for.
It's
They're smaller, and we are
Yeah,
larger. but
exactly, yeah. There's
It's
reasons.
something that some people, well, you must do this, and I want to move in closer. It's not something we have to do, it's something we provide.
And Bill, I just want to touch real quick on the time points as well. And it's, a few years ago, I did a bus ride along, and my mind was blown, at what the bus drivers do, and how they're going to each bus stop, and some of them are stopping at houses. And I've seen it firsthand that they might wait a couple of minutes because the little one's in the house, still trying to finish breakfast, and mom's, like this, hold on a minute, or they're running to the bus and their shoe falls off and they gotta tie the shoe. So 1 minute is can be gone like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And just seeing how tight these times are.
And then you multiply
The-
the number of kids,
One kid dropping their shoe or something out of their backpack and running back, 10 feet could
In
throw
fact,
everything.
that's the next slide. maybe.
And I've seen the bus drivers, do that, and be just completely patient and just completely awesome with the kids.
So we do, as Scott mentioned, we do have shortages, and therefore we are running late. In fact, up to 4:15 or maybe even sometimes later to pick up kids at the elementary school. This is the disclaimer that I was talking about that can cause these type of things. So this is in a nice little perfect world on your polyplot system. You're just looking at a map. So when you think about traffic congestion, timing of lights, weather, volume of students, student conduct issues, late release from school, teacher dealing with, with a fight or something like that, or just something that's going on.
Shoes that fall off.
Yep, your shoes that fall off, exactly. So, and the one thing that's interesting about Waterford, okay, is that in Waterford, things can go on a long way away and create a massive traffic jam in Waterford. So you get an accident on I-75 and everybody's gonna come down Dixie Highway and flow right through Waterford to try to avoid it and get around it. That just destroys the whole routing process, and all these numbers just go right out the window. So just keep those things in mind, and then if we have a mechanical failure on the bus, Mike's had to go get bus, Terry had to, so those type of things can. Right now, we're running with no cushion. In fact, I'll get that in another slide, but when you look at our routing packages, okay, so when you look at the general ed, and we're talking the general ed side of things, we really only have 30 general ed routings, so that's really condensed, it's really efficient. However, we do a lot of specialty things in the district, which is, these type of things are mandated. These other things, just the condition of, bringing students in, what's best interest of the student and so forth. So we do 21 special routes. So we have the STEM shuttle. We have the Durant shuttles. So really, we can't possibly go around picking up all the kids and bringing them to Durant. So if you're in the Kettering or if you're in the Mott pickup areas, then you go to those schools and then you shuttle them to Durant. So it makes things, it sounds inefficient, but it actually makes things very efficient for transportation. To handle that, we have one student that goes from Pierce to Kettering, very talented student. We want to make sure that they advance. I forget what programming they're in, but so we have a situation where we take some kids from the schoolcraft attendance area to Houghton. So things like this you wouldn't think of much, but they're nickel and dime things that just start to add up. It's like, hey, wait a minute, Head Start and Whipsy, that's part of the programming there that they do get transportation. So and it's good. It's a much needed program. All of these are needed. But we have 7 routes for that. JK. So in our JK program, we have Haviland and Grayson. So we're going around the entire district with 5 buses to get them to those 2 locations. STARS program, I think that's one. It's if we do have a student in STARS and need transportation. So it's not always. We have 1 bus, but it might not always be used, so there may be some flexibility at times. We do have an ESL after-school program, where so as everybody gets off of some of their routes, they come back and loop through for this program. And then, as I mentioned, some of the other programs, so we have the 2 routes for the Michigan School Deaf and Blind. Then we have the hearing impaired program for 1 KMS 3, Life Tracks, Mott. And so these are special education programs, so different busing, different capacity level for these, and each one of these buildings have a specialized program in them. And in fact, even the elementary, so it's not like you would have, each elementary will have, like we have a cognitive impaired program, we have an ASD program, and the different type of programs. What we have is, we have some, like an ASD program at, say, at Donaldson Hills and one at Houghton, correct? Great, thanks. Or Haviland, yeah. And so you have routes going to those specific schools. You can't just pick up in, if you were in the Houghton or the Haviland routing area, you wouldn't be part of that bus. You actually have to have a bus throughout the community to get to that program. And then we do have, this doesn't include private one-on-one transportation, so we do have homeless students that are now not in the district necessarily. They lived in the district that became homeless, so we do utilize ACE transportation services in those instances to bring them to school. So courtesy stops. Courtesy stops are things that we've done above and beyond, but there's purposes and rhymes and reasons to them throughout all of the years. These courtesy stops are not out of the path. So in other words, they don't get off of the path to where they're going for the next stop. They just have to stop between to schedule what would be non-courtesy stops. These are non-transportable area. There are walkers sometimes, or they're within walking distance. I don't know why I use that term. But in some instances, so let's take Donaldson Hills and this Elizabeth Lake Road. All right, it's a 5-lane road. You draw a circle around Donaldson, and you've got a 1-mile radius. You're going to walk. Well, do we want our kids walking across Elizabeth Lake Road, in the dark and everything else to an elementary school? So, no. So we do have what we would refer to as a courtesy stop for that. And then we do have established stops with some courtesy students. So they are an established stop. It's a normal stop, but you might not be technically allowed to be on that bus. If we have the capacity, of course, we'll let you on that bus. So in other words, if I'm within 1 mile walking distance, but yet I can go a quarter mile the opposite direction and get to a bus stop, I might walk that, I might go to the opposite direction, get on a bus, and as long as we have the capacity, of course, we'll take the child. And then
these are typically stops right on the non-transported border. So literally, you're the next house over, and I'm sorry, you live exactly 1.5 or 1 mile over the transported area, so you can't get on the bus technically. The kids, if we have room on the bus and there's no behavioral issues and things like that, we'll let them ride. It's a customer service issue.
But these situations, you can tell that this is critical. This doesn't add really any time to stop what we're doing, but we wanted to make sure you understood that there were some courtesy students and stops, approximately 140 riders for that.
Can you go back to the 50% Are dual stops for divorce situations?
Yeah.
Means,
Custodial issues, so parents might have a child on certain days and the other parent will, so we'll accommodate them getting
Different
on
stops
different
depending on
stops
days.
depending on the situation.
for 140 kids, we do that, we accommodate.
50% of them are.
About half.
But there aren't any
70.
stops, right? So they're just going, they're staying with mom
Right,
this day.
yeah.
So they're jumping at mom's bus stop where kids are being picked up,
The
right?
closest eligible bus.
Yeah, and the same thing for when they're at dad's.
Yeah, these numbers are based on.
We're not
requests that we-
driving out of district to go pick them up.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's still part of the routing, you know, our normal routing. It's just that we're allowing them to get on the bus at a normal stop. So let's look back on staffing. So 10 years ago, we had 44 routes, and you see now currently we have 30 routes for regular ed. Special ed 24, now we're at 21. Wages were 1829, now they're 1734. Remember, this is 10 years ago. If we took where the top wage would have been, now you remember this group took a concession in 14, 15, I believe was the year. 15, yep, okay, so, going into the 15, 16 school year, yeah, summer. Yeah, they took a concession, and as a part of that concession, if they had not taken that concession, and they received, you know, we received a 1.9 as a district, 2%, and all the different things over the years, they actually, without the concession taken in, they would be at 1939 on the normal schedule, but they're 1734. So, this kind of repeats a little bit of that. Actually, in 2009, hit a high of 1866, but again, with the financial situation, you know, in 2009, we were heading in some pretty heavy, difficult economy and so forth, so there was a 1% off schedule that was never paid, or they would have been at a peak of 1885 back then. Let's see, we entered into the concessionary agreement like we just said, 15-16 school year. And then unfortunately, because it was a one-sided agreement, and it was really because we were down to a $1 million fund balance, we had to get ourselves out of this bad situation. Unfortunately though, when you do situations like this, you can't hire anybody because nobody's gonna come and work for this when everybody else pays more. So in 17-18, of course, we were short drivers like we are now. So when we put this in, we moved it up to $17 an hour, but everybody caught up with us. So here's where we're at now. I did put in a 2% factor for 1920 for full disclosure, and these are top salaries, or top wages. So the county average right now is 1944. If you look at our bordering districts, because when you look at transportation, not everybody, of course, but a great deal of our drivers live in the community, or they're really close to the community. They don't tend to travel far because, you know, the difference between, you know, your end time in the morning and your start time in the afternoon, they tend to want to go home. And so living far away doesn't really allow for that, because it is kind of a difficult schedule to think about, because there's a bigger gap than just, say, a 1 hour lunch hour. So, Clarkston's at 2010, Huron Valley's at 1751, Pontiac's at 2203, Walled Lake's 2244, West Bloomfield is 1948. You can see it's a little bit higher here. These are Durham or Dean or something like that, services. Average with our bordering districts averages $20.33 an hour. So we're, you know, if you go through everything that we just talked about, we're back to where we were, where we're at 1734. We're behind the 8 ball with it when it comes to how much we can do as far as hiring drivers. We currently have 51 drivers, we're 3 drivers short. We have 1 relief driver going on leave in November, so we're utilizing all of our subs right now to make it happen. There is 1 driver in training, but 1 current driver will be out for 6 weeks at the end of November, so that's a wash. Mechanics, secretaries, and on occasion the coordinator are filling in for the drivers, like everybody in what they should be doing back in their areas, in the central areas, whether they're working on the buses or they're answering phones for parents and so forth, they are filling in. So some of the staff are working 11-hour shifts, so they're doing their mechanics job and then they're also driving the bus. We can't keep doing this, and if these guys can't fill this, the situation's just going to get worse, because otherwise we're going to end up not having a mechanic either, as well. So like I said, we can't dig deeper. Once the driver illnesses, and this is why we're here tonight, because we're really worried, when you start getting into the January and February, and you're really getting into flu season, we're gonna have some real difficulties. Not only that, Jim, if you wanna talk just for a second, in March, the rules changed. Oh, I'm sorry.
Back up for just
Yeah.
that previous slide of the, our surrounding districts. How many of them are district employees? I mean, Pineapple, Lakewood, Bloomfield, I don't believe are they?
Right, yeah, that's what I said, these three are with private companies.
And again, what we're paying isn't what they're actually costing us. Because we're paying 33 cents on a dollar toward retirement, where they're not doing that.
Yes.
So again, you're looking at the wages of what someone's making compared to what we're actually cost us to pay that person. So I mean, should we be looking at the privatization again if that saves us money? Because again, we're paying them that wage, and then the hidden wages all behind that no one ever talks about or sees, but it actually costs us something, if I'm correct.
That is 100% correct, but it's a political football that I'm not touching. I'm just kidding.
I just want to get to the point that Rob made on that first point that, you know, those three school districts that are paying 22.44 and
Yep.
19.48,
Yep.
that they don't get benefits like our employees do because
We
they're
have single
privatized.
coverage, it depends, I mean, we'd have to go back and look at that, but we have,
No retirement.
well, you gotta remember, a lot of our newer employees don't do retirement either.
Well, but we have quite a few that do, correct?
The majority of our staff is less than 5 years.
But we still have to pay for them as if.
We still have to pay
That's
for
the
them.
problem,
Yeah.
it's not.
But what I-
They don't
what
get the
I'm drawing the
benefit.
line is that it's, when you look at those three districts, it's not necessarily apples to apples because the
Well,
privatized.
you know what, for what you're saying is true, what Rob said is absolutely true. What I'm dealing with is, you know, an administrator with Jim and Terry and Mike as their group, is I am having to compete against this, because this is what the driver's getting in it. And
That's all I want to see.
And that's all I wanna see. And so that's what's making it very difficult for us to hire and get the drivers in. So, you're right, and but it's just,
But it is costing us, there's that legacy cost that no one sees, that it's actually costing us in the bottom line, but you can't sell it because, see, I'm saying, I don't make that much money, it doesn't, that's what it costs, that's what you bring home.
you can instantly
But you
pay,
can't sell it.
yeah.
Unfortunately, I think people are just in the moment now, and they're just looking at.
That's why I am too.
That hourly rate, so, you know, we thought we had a really good year last year, we were running along pretty strong. We had little bumps in the road in the winter when we had illnesses and some leaves and things like that. Struggled through the spring, well, all of a sudden in the spring, drivers started shopping, and we lost a dozen drivers from March until June.
Oh, my.
And that was just tragic. I mean, the majority of those folks, we got a couple retirements, we had some people that, you know, had illnesses, just didn't want to do the job anymore. The majority though left for, I lost 3 drivers at Cranbrook. They left for a higher rate to go drive for Cranbrook. You know, those folks left the system, you talk about leaving the retirement system and all those other benefits, they left that just to go chase that rate. So, you know, that's a real concern. You know, the other folks, you know, we're losing drivers to the road commission. It's a real competition for professional drivers right now.
Yeah, and again, I opened up that can of worms, when we did shop it before, because again, we didn't know how much they cost us. If we found out it was a whole lot more,
Yeah.
but is that something we need to look at again,
Well,
what it actually cost us?
When we did that study, it wasn't to, I mean, I know we took the concessions and so forth to help us financially, but
That helps our budget.
when we got into really, it was being able to retain, and I understand we're talking about retirement, so it was able to retain drivers at a higher rate that wouldn't cost the bottom line, it wouldn't cost the budget any more money. And so it was kind of like, okay, how can we get more drivers? It wasn't a, you know, in some positions you look at, say, hey, we're gonna privatize, that's to save money on the bottom line. This was more of, hey, this is gonna save money from the retirement system and keep people employed with a higher pay. So it's a complicated situation. However, right now, we're operating and competing against this type of stuff. And Joan, I mean, like you said, the tax, because it's really, for a driver that comes in today who doesn't go into the retirement system, we're still paying 38% on the driver. You know, it's like, okay, so why are we doing that? That's a tax on us. You know, but it's because, and honestly, it's because the pension fund, between the pension and the OPEB, with the benefits, is what, $42 billion in the whole state of Michigan? So we have to pay that, so. It's just very complicated, but at the same time, this is what we're dealing with, and so there's, we have to do something or we're not gonna have the drivers. There's one more component, I believe in March, is a new standard for drivers.
Yeah, they actually delayed that.
Oh, did they?
for a
Okay,
couple
good.
years.
Yeah, that
got
makes sense,
through this,
because-
right, Because
yeah.
that would have even made it more cumbersome for us to onboard people. There's a whole new training component that's the federal motor carrier is instituting a whole other training component. Before you can even start training somebody, they want to go to training. So how many people are gonna get freaked out by going to that pre-training and,
Go to training to get trained.
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And that kind of goes to another question I have. So last time, when we were struggling and we raised wages, we had an issue where people were saying they were applying, but we weren't getting the applications, and there was a hiccup, a flaw with, you know, the process and online. Have we fixed that flaw so that make sure we are getting every applicant? And then two,
I think there was enough pushback on the Oakland Schools Consortium, because that's Oakland Schools in their consortium that was not working right, and enough pushback to make it
We have a
little-
new one.
a new one, so it's easier to use. It's a website that's easier to utilize.
and then the second,
That's just a matter of opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't like it.
and then secondly, of the bus drivers now, they're not all full-time, right?
Right.
What are the hours, or what's the proportion of hours that the majority of hours, or average hours of this?
I don't have the average hours of, you know, if we have a 6-hour route, 4-hour route, how many people are, and I don't have that with me right now.
But the average hours of an average bus driver, would you say?
Yeah, they're not full-time.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Probably about 5 hours a day, you know. Kind of about an average.
We pay about $7 an hour back to the state, I mean, just farmer's math, so.
Yeah.
We could give them a $7 an hour raise.
If we did that,
Probably
we'd
does.
that's it.
Or if the
Or we
state
could-
would
if we could
say,
stay- if we could
if
start
they're
our own
not,
business.
those that are not, yeah,
Wanna buy some
which we
business?
tried to do.
Well,
I think I already did.
what I'd like to see is if the state would just tax these guys, you know, the difference, so there.
Exactly,
If you're gonna
exactly,
tax
make it a
us,
fair
tax them,
playing
yeah.
field for
Yeah.
us, like.
The advantage we do have, I mean, if we can digress just a little bit from a finance standpoint, I mentioned earlier about having a $1 million fund balance. However, you know, we've really made strides as a district, and we're on good, solid financial footing. You know, I'd probably get questioned what I'm gonna say tonight, but these districts are not in the same boat. So, well, this one is, but these two are not, and neither is this one. So to actually compete against us, if we're to change our salary, it'll be very difficult for them to make a counter move.
And is it, before, I remember when we went through this process, that there was some complications with when just because somebody applies, the likelihood that they're actually gonna follow, there's a number of steps, right? They have to get their licensing and all that stuff. So we can expect that no matter how aggressive we are, that, I mean, if we will be raising the wage, but being aggressive about it, that a decent amount won't actually follow all the steps to get through the process or make it through the process to be a bus driver.
Correct. Yeah, there is a decent amount of drop off. However, if say somebody in one of these communities
We're gonna steal it.
is,
I'm sure.
lives in Waterford and would rather work for Waterford, we'll have a competitive wage to make that happen. So we might be able to get some people in the district that actually have, they won't be brand new drivers, they'll actually be, you know, experienced
Fully
drivers.
credentialed, come in fully credentialed.
Do you have a I'm sorry, go ahead, Julie.
I just actually have a question. You know, I'm kind of straightforward. Is this about giving the bus drivers a raise or about entertaining outsourcing?
Giving the bus drivers a raise.
All right, okay, then I'm on board with that.
Do you have a proposed salary and what the cost will be?
Yes, I do. We'd like to venture into negotiations with, Becky's in the back over here, so we'd like to go into negotiations and be in these ranges here. I don't want to say this high, but we certainly need to get into the ballpark on the higher end and with the higher skills and do maybe back to the way it was with some steps involved in there, and then, but we need to negotiate that, that's one. And two, some of the dollar amounts we have in our minds, transportation funding is a little complicated, because we do get special ed funding at 70%, so we do get some money back. So we're looking anywhere from probably 150 to 175, right around. I mean, if the number I had in my head, it's $161,000 is the cost. So, you know.
I really just want to, I understand you have to go into negotiations. I know these are assuming a 2% raise was
Yeah,
given, and
yeah.
I don't know if that's the case with our surrounding districts, and so I just
This one was a 1920 number. I can't remember, and I believe this one was. These three actually had 2% factored into, because we didn't have the data to get that or a response.
If this doesn't fix our problem by the end of the year, is it something that we would look into then as going back out again for the number? Again, unless we have another number to compare it to what it's actually costing us, we can't make decisions. Again, I want to give them, again, I want ours. I want our people.
Yeah.
But it's one of them things where it's costing me that extra 33 to 38% is something that's in the background. That's added to the bottom line no one sees, that it does come out of our budget.
I'll say this from a generic sense. We always have to look at everything in the cost.
Okay, so long as you're looking at all that stuff. I feel comfortable.
One thing that I don't really want to venture off into that, because if at any point you say that we're outsourcing something like that, we'll probably lose a third of our drivers, so.
Yeah.
So,
And another thing with outsourcing, a lot of those companies, Dean, Durham, they're having the same issue.
I see
So-
their ads right next to ours
Yeah.
in the classified.
Yeah.
I see ours
So
there every day
really-
looking for bus drivers, and I see
Yeah,
theirs
really at
also.
this point, they're not looking to put in bids that actually save you money.
Right, okay, because they're looking to make a lot more money so
Well,
they can add.
Well, and
It's a
they're
business
looking
sense.
at the fact that they have to pay, they have to find and
Yes.
pay people additional dollars more.
Yeah.
So they're not looking at
So that's why it was
contracts
so expensive.
like they used to,
last
that would
time
be,
we
that
looked
would
out.
save money.
Okay, and that clears up the other part of it, then it's not really an option.
No, you don't look.
Per se.
Look, the reason we're here tonight is that we can just
Fix
see
it.
what's gonna happen in February. We're gonna have, and people are gonna come to the board meetings, and we're gonna have a kid sitting in a bus stop at 0-degree weather, and we're not gonna have a driver pick them up in time, or in a timely fashion, certainly not in time, and so we're trying to rectify that, and trying to get ahead of it, as quickly as possible, but we're looking for support from the board to be able to move towards negotiating some sort of fix for this.
How did the transportation referral bonus, how is that panning out? Do we have feedback on that?
I think it's a little early to tell, but it has not rendered the results. I think it's
Too early, no?
a little too early. I think, without saying a whole lot, we're strategically thinking, we talk about a raise, we may be able to attract some other drivers that are trained. So we're looking at maybe a combo in here. So again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to be fiscally responsible. So initially, we did the referral. And I will tell you, this team did a good job, because I did as superintendent about 6 to 8 weeks ago. I pushed back and I said, let's do an analysis, let's see what we can do to consolidate routes and so on and so forth. So a lot of this was born out of that. I felt that they needed to come to cabinet, and really I wanted to be convinced before we spend more money in a situation that we're really trying to resolve an issue.
And so, and part of that, I'm sorry,
I just wanted to give a shout out to Jim, Terry, and Mike, because it sounds like they're making some really amazing things happen on shoestrings.
We put the puzzle together on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, kudos to you and thank you.
Absolutely.
And just-
Wonderful stuff.
and so the board
Our
members from.
staff does a great job, our drivers are outstanding, they care about our kids, and they are super flexible and accommodating to pick up those little pieces to make sure the kids get to school safe. And when we start talking about, getting to that point where we were a couple of years ago, where buses weren't showing up because we were just, so short, it's just a very dangerous situation.
I would like to add, when Scott asked that, just from a historic perspective and, new to the district, I had to, we went through and showed how, we've reduced our transportation drivers by 33%, over the years. Not all at once, of course, but over all these years. So, there has been the consolidation of routes, the, trying to make this puzzle work, as Jim said. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that the bus drivers go above and beyond as far as just not driving, but in many instances being a friend to some of these kids. I've seen some of the bus drivers actually get text messages from the parents, if there's an issue, and I mean, they have relationships that they've built with these kids, so they do a fantastic job. Do you know, Bill, and I hate to kind of put you on the spot, and I'm not sure if you know this number, well, because we were talking about it, when we did the RFP for outsourcing back years ago, it was gonna cost us quite a substantial amount more, I believe, correct?
No, it was, if I remember right, I think it was more of just a break even, so why do it, type of thing, but it was, what had happened during that period of time, in addition to, you have to break apart the RFP into different components. And the one component was, we could give our drivers raises, substantial raises, because it's a calculation. We could give our drivers raises, but it depends on how many were in the retirement system, because they wouldn't be in the retirement system, or you could get a raise if you're looking straight at the dollar. However, there was another component on the maintenance of the buses. And the maintenance was gonna cost a lot of money, but we had just redid like a third of our fleet. And it didn't make sense to say, hey, you're not getting that savings that we're gonna get. We're not giving it to you, because we've got these new buses, and so we have new purchased buses and leased buses, and it became kind of like, well, then, no, we're not doing that, so. Go ahead.
So this is relative to the discussions we had several years ago, and none of us wants to privatize, but we are looking at a $7 and plus differential. And so I don't know, has there been any movement with the state, does anybody know, relative to, at that time, we were saying, can't we have the MEA do a separate union for bus drivers that sets itself up so that we don't have to pay into the pension system for those drivers that aren't, so that we could do something really significant for them.
We reached out to the MEA group, we reached out to, in Lansing, and, there's legalities in it, and they was like, no.
They weren't gonna budge.
And we continue to be at that stage.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, we want to get more money into your hands, and it's so frustrating, really. Yeah, it'd just be so much nicer and easier if we could,
Yeah, it would be a nice component, and that's really thinking out of the box, where you keep your staff in a unionized environment, however, you remove the tax or the 38%
Right.
component from the pension fund.
huge.
So it's, they get both, but.
That's the root cause of the issue, and so
Right.
let's remove the root cause, but still get everybody what they need, and but didn't work out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill,
Thanks.
and thank you to the entire transportation department for all you do every day.
They make it happen, so
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate it. Yeah. Okay.
Scott, do you know how to drive a bus?
I don't, that's one of these jobs I haven't done, I don't think I could either. They used to tell me over there, when I was overseeing, they wanted to get me,
I'm gonna say this person training for training.
All right, well, I appreciate your guys' support on it, I really do, and we'll move forward, and then what you'll see in a short period of time, in the next month, whether it's the 5th or the 19th, depends on how quick Becky will listen, how quick she wants to negotiate on this, so, to imagine quick. And we'll bring a proposal to you for approval. Okay, thank you.
So just a couple of slides, Bill, I'll have you pull that up. And so I've shared communication with each one of you on this next issue, the WASA restoration. And for the sake of transparency, I want to put a couple of slides up here to kind of bring back some of those points regarding the history on this. So just some big picture ideas, Bill. We'll go to the next slide. In 2013-2014, all employee groups, including WASA, agreed to a 1%. Key is they agreed to it, a 1% off schedule concession for 1 year only. Now, due to budget constraints in 14 and 15, the district maintained a 1% reduction for all of these groups. The WEA and MESPA then, these union groups filed a ULP, an unfair labor practice. My understanding was that was going to result in quite a hefty penalty and fine, so some things were discussed. But even before that, WASA assumed that they would stay out of this ULP and that they would receive the same settlement the associations received, and therefore did not join the unfair labor practice, but they had been asked to do so. On the next slide, pushing ahead to 15-16, the WEA and MESPA groups negotiated a one-time only revenue sharing agreement that was based on student enrollment and therefore withdrew the ULP. Enrollment was better than projected or better than budget loss, and therefore the association groups received revenue sharing that equated to more than 1% question. WASA did not receive the restoration. The dollars had been held back that had already been agreed to paying them. So they had wages reduced by 1%. I think this is an open-ended issue. Our finances are a little bit better. My recommendation is that we restore the 1% wage concession based on the rates at that time and to the impacted WASA members that are currently employed. I have sought legal consultation. This is an outstanding issue that could very well be brought back up. The ULP time may be time barred, but it could be a civil issue. And not that that's been discussed with the group, but we would hate to have that be brought up. I think it's the right thing to do, as I've shared with you. The cost is about $25,000 with the upcharge and so forth. That's I've got $34,900. So, as I've shared with you, I do recommend that we move forward with that. And I don't think it's something we need to vote on because these were wages that were already approved. But again, I'm doing this, as I shared with the team here, out of full transparency.
This is a one-time,
One
we're not,
time.
no retro
No.
type stuff, we're just keep adding up and
No.
one-time only.
So, these wages from 15-16, those were one-time only, is correct, that saying?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So we would go back to their base wages at that time. So it would be the dollars that were held back.
And this,
No more.
this would be one-time only as well?
That is correct.
Thank you.
We appreciate you looking at this and bringing the recommendation forward to us. It does not require a vote, as I understand it. You're just looking for,
Just let us all know.
so that we all understand what's
So we
going
don't wonder
on.
where that extra $25,000 or $30,000 went?
That's
You
exactly
didn't
right.
get a new pool?
No.
Okay.
So if we're ready, we have another lot of money, dollar issues, but I think an opportunity regarding a health and wellness coordinator. So I'm gonna turn that over to the team. Basically, what we're doing is we're spending dollars for health and wellness services above and beyond what we believe we could do by posting the position, putting it in non-affiliate, non-administrative, but in a non-affiliate position. And the position could actually take over some additional duties. It would be more efficient. And again, this position and these folks that we bring in service our most needy students at some of our special ed programs. So I'm not sure who's gonna take it from
Actually,
here.
I'm gonna start this
Oh,
one.
good. Okay.
This is actually, would not be affiliated with KMS, but help me here with the history because this predates me. We used to have a school nurse, someone who would handle our NICRS program, which is the data from the state and who's been immunized and what still needed to be done with that. Someone who would work on plans of care for students with staff members, oversee that, work with our diabetic students. Well, as a budget cut many years ago, that position was cut. But as you also know, there are a lot more health issues now with students than we've seen in the past. Allergies, diabetes is on the rise. Just a lot of things that legally we need to take care of with plans of care. We have been doing that over the years with an interim health service, a contracted company that has worked for us, and they've been fine, but over the years, those costs have increased significantly. And so we started to take a look at it, and Bill can share the numbers with you, but it is significantly cheaper for us to hire our own person in a non-affiliated role. and to have that person work in-house and take over all those duties that were essentially performed by the school nurse. In addition, we since have opened the teen health center, so that person would act as a liaison with those programs. Not the one at KMS, or CBS again. I'm sorry, KS. At CBS, they would be a liaison, but KMS has its own nurse and they will continue to have their own nurse. What we're bringing forward for recommendation and for information tonight is just that we would like to fulfill this position internally, stop contracting with the outside nursing companies, save ourselves some money in the process, and have somebody who will get to know our parents, our families, our community, and be a resource for all of them in-house.
And the key is the dollar figure,
Yeah,
we think on
it's,
average, we would actually save.
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept, because we just talked about, outsourcing, this is reversing that, because if we can get more out of the position at a cheaper rate, less costly, let's put it right, less costly, and even with the markup with social security tax and the retirement cost and healthcare and everything else, we still would save about $20,000 from what we're paying our current contractor versus all those extra costs. And we would get more services out of the position from the internal standpoint, as what as Lisa had mentioned, so.
With our current contract, is it one person or is it a group of people?
It's a group, we basically worked with one or two nurses in particular.
Okay.
And I think feedback from staff would be that it would be nice to have a person who would build relationships with parents and students and actually get to know their background and their issues and how they might help. Well, I didn't say that. But they just feel like it would be nice to have an internal person, since it would save us money. And then that
Better
person,
service.
they could also do trainings for us in AER, CPR,
But I
all
mean,
those other things.
one person has, they're limited to where if we had 2 or 3, working 2 or 3 hours here and there, they'd be able to get around more so than one person. But again, I think the relationship is very, very important, especially with people that have needs.
Right.
They need stability.
But know too, Rob, that when we called the interim services, they did not work for us full time. So this is a cost that was incurred when they might come out twice a week to a different building.
Okay, so it wasn't
Or,
2 or 3 people for 2 or 3 hours?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. This was a lot of money for limited services.
Okay.
Is that a copy of the job description, or do you have a copy of it for us to?
Here, we can have one.
How much were we spending a year?
You welcome.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, the question.
That's a good
Yeah,
question.
what's
It's a
the-
bill question.
Bill, how much were we spending a year to outsource that?
Yeah, we take like kind of a 5-year average, because it does bounce around a little bit, probably around 135,000.
A year?
A year.
For somebody part-time?
Not even.
Because you're contracting another service, so you pay a lot more per hour, because they're doing all their benefits and payroll and all that,
And we need them, so they can charge whatever they want.
So
And
we
those
were
are professional
paying,
field
you said
positions.
135,000 a year?
On average,
On
over
average.
5 years.
On average?
Yeah, because the hours would change, the billings would change.
But it's probably gone up each year.
Uh,
They can get it, so they
Well,
can.
They're flat,
It
right?
depends-
Yes.
It depends on really of our
I'm
student
sorry,
population.
what
and
you-
needs to-
They review all of our plans of care, and those go up every year. It
Right.
seems like we get more and more of those.
Did you have a
We're only
question?
gonna prefer a nursing degree? Do the people that come here right
That's
now?
required. What it would be is if they had a master's.
Oh, it says bachelor's.
Yeah.
Bachelor's of nursing.
Nursing
But no.
preferred.
Well, they have to be licensed as a registered nurse in Michigan. You don't have.
So
to
they could be an
have-
LPN, they could be an LPN.
Yeah, okay.
You can be an RN and not have a bachelor's.
Right.
Right.
We would prefer a bachelor's degree, I would be looking for that.
I would normally, in fact, when I saw this on the agenda, I'll be honest, I am not a fan of adding to our structural costs year over year, and the idea that now we're committed to a salary and another employee, and it's not grant funded, it's not, we can't use Title I dollars, all of those things would be concerning to me, except that,
We can eliminate it again.
well, yeah, don't say that.
We've done it before.
It
We'll do
is-
it again.
It's always, just wanna be really careful before you bring in somebody and increase your structural costs. This is something we're committing to from now into the future, and then once we do wanna cut it, then there's a whole big hullabaloo, and, you know, those are hard decisions to make, so. But given that there's a cost savings and recognizing that the cost of outsourced services, for this type of work is pretty significant, I'm very supportive.
And it's
Save
a
money
little
and
beyond,
win.
I mean, I'm certainly all about saving money, but I will say, in receiving feedback and working with the nurses that
Better
have been things
services.
on plans of care, I think to have someone who's used to working with families, who's used to working with parents who are concerned, who's used to working
There's
with
a social
children.
work aspect to it.
Yeah, there's an aspect to it that maybe when
Relationships,
you're
yeah.
contracting somebody and there's not a relationship, does not exist perhaps.
Exactly, I agree. It sounds like a win-win.
Now, so we would get somebody full-time for approximately half the cost, is that correct?
2/3.
2/3.
No,
Yeah, you
because-
have charge costs to that.
Yeah, and remember, we have to pay FICA and social security,
Right,
and,
okay.
yeah.
But it was
You add it
more
to
cost
that,
than
so-
that.
about 20,000 less than what we pay currently yearly on average.
And you said it's a non-affiliated position?
Non-affiliated, so that we're trying to get away from these blue book, but those are the non-affiliated.
Would not be
That's where-
administrative.
No,
They're in that new part fold.
Yeah.
And they're probably non-affiliated now, aren't they? We
Yeah, they're not in
contract-
any group right now because they're
No, because they're
contracted.
contracted, yeah.
Our district nurse at KMS is part
Right.
of the WEA.
Right.
And this is full-time? Like
11 months.
11.
But 40 hours a week?
Yes, oh, yes.
Which is more than what we got now.
Oh, by far.
Okay, I'm in.
I'm going with Julie.
So this, I believe, will be coming for a vote at the next meeting. If you have any
We have
questions
to
in the
vote
meantime.
on the position, or when we bring someone to the board to have them approved, once we post the position?
We don't approve non-affiliated.
Yeah.
right?
No, but not at the next
Under
meeting, I'm
the
sorry.
policy, we would approve an additional position, but it would be when we bring,
That person.
That
Well,
Bring the
but
person.
the rate, we still don't
But
bring that, they're
what's that?
included in the,
In the
That list
report.
that we get.
The list that we
the
get,
second, right. But we were looking for your
It's an-
approval to add the
it-
position.
under our policy, the non-affiliated position, it's an increase to the non-affiliated group, so
Right.
we would need an approval. Now, I think the key thing is you're just getting a nod, because again, we don't want to bring somebody who's probably given notice at the role job, bring them in front of you, and then you say, oh, no, we're not
We're
adding
not
this.
bringing
you know.
them in front of.
So we want to bring the actual position in front of you, but you would vote when we actually bring the person.
I got that.
Julie's for it, I'm for it.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, it's,
If any questions come up, you just give me a call.
Okay, okay.
Okay, who needs a copy?
Do you need it? Mine is very bad.
You need those.
All right, do we have, anything else, Scott?
Nope. I think that's, Steve, is that it?
Yep.
I think that's enough. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. That's the end of the agenda, so the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so much.
Oh, okay.
I want to report I read on. I just wrote my